Hey, welcome back to our Jingle Blades stitch along. Today we're going to go over the boot and the text at the bottom. Starting with the text, we're going to grab 2 strands of thread, and I'll be using my size 10 embroidery needle for this. So I'm going to add it to my needle, bring one end of the thread down a couple inches, and then the other end I'm going to tie a knot. Now coming up through the back of the fabric, I'm just going to use a back stitch to fill in the text here. And if you're working on the kit and you're wondering why I'm using black, it's because I changed my mind like halfway through this design. So the end result will look different than what I'm stitching right now, but it's the same stitch, the same amount of thread, the same needle. I just changed the colors, which it looks a lot better with the maroon color that I end up using. So just in case you're wondering what the heck is going on, I just didn't want to record it again. And then to dot the eye, I'm just using a French knot, just like this. Okay, now for the blades, we're going to use our diamond thread and a size 5 embroidery needle. And this is a non-divisible thread, so don't split the strands at all, just use it exactly how it comes out the spool. And it's a little tricky to get inside the needle. A lot of people don't like working with this thread. I totally understand. It can be a little bit fiddly, but it is so pretty in this pattern, so it's definitely worth it to give it a try. And I'll be using a satin stitch to fill in the entire lower part of this boot as well as the blade on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is try as seamlessly as possible to make it one continuous line throughout the heel and the blade. I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. So now that I filled in that small little part of the heel, I'm going to come back down to the bottom of the blade and continue my satin stitching. So it'll be this continuous line here, and there's not going to be a break between the shapes, and it will give us a really nice satin stitch. Now switching it up to a size 22 chenille needle and 6 strands of thread, we're going to stitch the laces. And again, this is a different color than the actual pattern tells you. I just didn't want to film it again, so the instructions are exactly the same, but if you're working on the pattern, it's the deep maroon color. So you're just going to use the back stitch to fill in the laces here with all 6 strands of thread. You're also going to use the back stitch to fill in the stitching at the toe part of the boot, which I didn't show, but it's the exact same stitching method that we used on the laces. Then when you're ready, you can go ahead and knot the thread off at the back of the hoop and trim off any excess thread. Bring it off your needle and then set that chenille needle aside because we're going to switch to a new needle now. So now with this magenta thread, I'm just going to grab 2 strands of it. You can use anywhere between 2 and 3 for this part. So I'm going to put them back together and then grab a size 10 embroidery needle. Then I'm going to use a satin stitch and I'm going to follow the same angle throughout the entire shape of the boot. And I'll have to break it up a little bit because we have already added the stitching from the laces and everything, but I'll show you how to do that. It's not too hard. So I'm just going in here with a normal satin stitch. I'm getting short on thread, so I'm going to tie a knot off at the back here, trim it off, and grab another 3 strands to work with so I can finish up my satin stitching. This part does take quite a bit of thread, so something to keep in mind. So now I'm just adding my satin stitching in between the stitching that I did previously for the laces, which is why we're only using a couple strands of thread, because that will allow us to get the neatest satin stitch filled in between all these tiny little spaces. Now I'm going to add the rest of the laces going down the boot. So I've gone back to that size 22 chenille needle with 6 strands of that same dark maroon thread, and I'm using a straight stitch to add these little lines here, and we're going to be stitching directly on top of that satin stitching we did in the previous step. Now I'm going to flip my hoop over, tie a knot, and switch needles again. So I'm going back to that size 5 embroidery needle. I've got my diamond thread, and I'm going to add a colonial knot at the end of each break of the lace here. And you can do either a colonial knot or a French knot. I included both on the stitch sampler because some are easier for others, so feel free to use whichever you want. It doesn't really make a difference. Then once you finish up the knots, you have finished the boot portion of the pattern. So I will meet you in the next video. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Thank you.